Hello, everyone. A very good evening to you all. This is Menaka, your host for the evening. Hope all of you are staying safe. The Institute is absolutely delighted and super thrilled to welcome you all to the second edition of the Product Leadership Festival, the Product Edition. The Product Leadership Festival, organized by the Institute of Product Leadership, and as you can see on the slide, we are on the second edition of the festival right now. We have the data and design edition in the coming months, and you have a chance to register for it right now and win exciting prizes. Every edition of festival holds amazing sessions in store for you, delivered by world-renowned speakers and industry experts. Expect to share their actionable insights and key learnings, and this will definitely help you catapult your career path. So folks, go ahead and register for all the editions right away. Check the chat window for the URL. Have you checked this out? videos.productleadershipfestival.com. If you haven't, please do. We have made available for you 50 plus enlightening keynote talks from our previous festivals. Again, please see the chat window for the URL. Before we move on to today's session, let me give you a quick intro to the Institute of Product Leadership. The Institute is a global B school for technology and product innovators. We have partnered with 3 universities in India and the University of Houston in the United States. Founded in 2012, IPL has built and developed a community of successful product leaders and now, of course, design and data leaders as well. You have an opportunity to win a free digital course. The best asked question in tonight's session will get this reward. Please scan the QR code to check out an array of digital learning courses offered by the Institute. The winner will get to pick a course of their own choice. The Institute offers new age skills for every step of your career. Every course is built, curated, and designed by industry practitioners. Once a speaker for tonight presents his insights, we will open up for questions. Please keep the questions ready and you can ask the questions on Zoom in the Q&A session. The session is being streamed live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So viewers of any other channels, please feel free to post your questions in the comments section and we will share it with the speaker. We are happy to announce the Atal Innovation Scholarship for the participants of the festival. This is worth 1 lakh rupees. This is extended only for a limited of time for a flagship program, Executive MBA in Product Leadership. Do scan the QR code and speak to a program counselor for more details. You can find the URL in the chat window as well. On the last day of the product edition of the festival, that is the 22nd of May, the coming Saturday, we have put together an open conference. This is a great opportunity to be a speaker at the festival and bring out the leader in you. Scan the QR code and nominate yourself or vote for other speakers and be part of this exciting initiative. Aspiring speakers can submit their topics and shortlisted 3 will get a chance to deliver a 30-minute talk. Now, coming to tonight's session, I'm very happy to welcome Mr. Sai Satish Vedam, the moderator of this session. Sai Satish is the Chief Product Officer, Senior Faculty Member, and Executive Coach at the Institute of Product Leadership. He was most recently the Senior Director of Product Management at Oracle. Great to have you with us, Sai. Handing the session over to you now.
Thank you, Menaka. Good evening, all of you. And excited to host the day 7 of product edition of the Product Leadership Festival 2021. For those of you who are joining us on all these days, welcome back. And for those of you who are joining this particular session, because this is a very interesting topic, and often many people working in products find it a bit challenging to think and how to approach this. So we have a superbly qualified speaker today. So before I introduce the speaker, I just want to take a couple of minutes and set a little bit of context. First, I want to acknowledge and state that what we are going through today, world over, and especially in India, are very trying circumstances. And I want to make sure that you're all taking additional precautions, staying at home, and get vaccinated wherever you can. That's the only way that this can keep us safe. So please do stay safe. Now, before I introduce Bader, a couple of quick housekeeping things. One, as Menaka mentioned, this event is streamed live on multiple platforms. It's streamed on LinkedIn Live, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. So if you're joining us on Zoom webinar and LinkedIn Live, please do ask your questions on those platforms. If you are on Zoom webinar, do pose your questions on the Q&A box, not on the chat box, so that the team can actually bring those questions together and we can ask those questions at the end of the speaker's session talk. If you are on LinkedIn Live, feel free to ask those questions on the thread. Those will also be pulled in. And before just like every other event, we have amazing speakers from all over the world on very specific topics that are relevant to product management and product leadership. And today is something that is close to my heart, and it's also a bit challenging, at least I found in my career journey. The topic today is ecosystem partnerships, engaging for product success. Now, partnership ecosystems are the enablers for growth and scale, but getting that right is not easy. So we have Bader Hamdan today joining us to help us understand how to think about go-to-market strategy, especially for early stage startups or whatever stage that you're in. Bader comes with an expertise that spans technology partnerships, strategic alliances, ISVs, and channel sales. He is currently a go-to-market advisor for startups, but prior to that, he was a head of technology partnerships and startup and ISV ecosystem for Google, where he had a global ownership of Google Cloud Data Protection ISV business and go-to-market strategy. Before Google, Bader was head of business development and product alliances at Cisco, where he led Cisco's global startup ISV ecosystem. And Bader is also a very active Clubhouse member. And for those of you who have not heard of Clubhouse, it's really taking the world by storm. It is an audio social network. It's fascinating, and Bader leads a community there around technology alliances. So on any given day, I'm sure Bader is talking to a group of people who are absolutely keen and interested in knowing how to form these alliances and go-to-market strategies. So welcome, Bader. Thanks for joining us on your morning. I hope everybody and in your family and self are doing fine and safe. So just to make sure that your audio is working, if you could say something.
Yes, hello everybody. Good morning, good evening. I'm assuming most of the audience is all over the place, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Hopefully the audio is coming okay.
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you so much. So Bader, before I hand it over to you, like every session, we take a quick poll to understand our audience that is joining today, right? I see several of them still streaming in, which is fine, and then they'll join. So let's understand, where are you guys coming from today, right? What kind of organizations are you working in? So how do you best describe your current organization, right? So is it a funded early stage startup in India, or an IT services company like IT majors that are world renowned like Wipro, Infosys, TCS, HCL, or a multinational product company with headquarters in India, or a mature product companies building products, whether it is a multinational company or an Indian company, right? So if you could encourage all of you to vote and tell us, where you come from, so that Bader can focus more, emphasize more on some of the aspects that are relevant to the audience here.
Thank you for that, Sai. That would be very helpful. We also have a couple other polls that we'd like to ask throughout as well, and I'll have placeholders in the presentation where we can do that as well.
Super, super. So as soon as we just go through these initial polls, I hope you can see the voting results in front of you. Right, looks like a majority of them today are joining from the IT services companies, and the fact that they're joining a product edition, product leadership festival indicates to me that there is a lot of interest in either creating new initiatives, product initiatives in those companies, or even working for product companies. Right. So let's bring up the second poll. On essentially what kind of strategic strategic planning activities that the audience, who are joining us perform on a typical day work. As you can see, there are several activities, both from a product management, product leadership, inbound and outbound type activities. The options that you see in front are built by partner, market sizing, business plan, pricing or monetization, industry trends, strategic roadmap. Now it's multi-choice, so please select based on current state as opposed to being aspirational. Okay, super. So encourage all of you to just click on those options and let us know the strategic planning activities as part of your typical day's work. Thank you, Menaka. And so looks like 65% strategic roadmap, 41% business plans, and 38% built by partner, which is very, very interesting to know. So I'm sure we will get to more of that in the session. So with that, let me launch your first poll. Do you want to start and then launch the poll, Bader, or the first poll?
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great if we can switch, so I can go ahead and pull up the presentation on my end, and we can start. We can get going here.
Yes, go ahead.
Awesome. Let's do this here. All right. Tell me if you can see it.
Yep.
Going into presentation mode. Is that clear?
Yes.
All right. I'm not sure what's happening with the video because that goes away. So hopefully you can still see me speaking at the same time. Awesome. Again, Sai, thank you so much for this opportunity and for the Product Leadership Institute. Really glad to be here. And I want to second what Sai said. Hopefully everybody's safe and well and sound with what's happening in India. And also I want to take the opportunity to say, we keep our prayers for everything that's happening in the Middle East at the moment, with all of the stuff going on in Gaza and Palestine. And
Indeed.
Israel. So with that, regardless of what side you're on, it's a humanity thing that we need to worry about, and not the political piece. So everybody, hopefully in this world, will come to a place of humanity where we all just feel with each other as human beings first and foremost, and that's what's most important. So with that, I'm really glad to be here to talk about ecosystem partnerships. I'm not going to go through introductions. Obviously, that was done, but come with a wealth of partnerships experience.
Peter, sorry to interrupt you. Your video is not on, so it shows it's turned off.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it turns it off here. Let me try this again. I think. Is that better?
I can see you now. Yep.
Okay. Can you still see me even with the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. That is perfect. So again, really appreciate the opportunity to be here. We're going to spend just a few minutes talking about partnerships, ecosystem partnerships. But before we do that, I'd like to launch a quick survey just to kind of get a sense of where everybody's at when it comes to their understanding of the ecosystem landscape, the opportunity, the different partner types, the motions. So if we can launch that poll, Sai, does that work?
Yeah, it's already launched, Bader. I think people are voting for it already. So.
Oh, perfect. Okay. All right. So I have to switch back to the thing. So if you see me switching back, that's what's happening.
Don't worry about it. I'll read out the results as well.
No worries.
How familiar are you with the ecosystem partnerships? So the results is not familiar at all, 73%, and
Got it.
familiar 25%, right? So that gives you a sense of baseline understanding of it.
Yeah. No, this is great. So it's a perfect opportunity to level set, and it's kind of what I expected, to be honest with you. Just been having worked with a lot of product and engineering teams over the years. The full understanding of what partnerships really is limited. So we'll take a few minutes and just talk about again, high level about what the business implications are, what's happening in the industry that's really causing a lot of shifts around the ecosystem. Talk about the ecosystem landscape. Talk about the types. And then talk about how to engage best with from a partner ecosystem to rationalize your product strategy, to have a full blown go-to-market strategy, and we'll then open it up for a discussion and Q&A. So does that sound like a plan?
Indeed.
All right. So perfect. We'll go ahead and get going here. So a little bit about what's happening in the market, right? I mean, as we all know, there's been a lot of disruption happening over the years, and especially with last year, a lot of things were accelerated. You look at automation, you look at cloud acceleration, the customer experience, the partner experience, the employee experience, and the adoption of marketplaces and e-commerce as a means of transaction. A lot of these are shifting where the market is headed. Where the channel and the partner ecosystem is headed, and more importantly, where the customer's mindset is, and as far as where the customer's buying journey is, and how do we meet them where they are. So a few stats that I'd like to share with us to just kind of level set and start the conversation today. As you see here, a study was done by Accenture where 76% of the business leaders that were surveyed, basically 76% of them indicated that their business models are changing and will be unrecognizable in the coming years and in the next 5 years. So that speaks at volume around kind of the overall enterprise value of the opportunity that we're talking about. And this is across all industries, all sectors, where the biggest catalyst of that disruption, where the business models will be unrecognizable, is the ecosystem plays. And we'll talk about that here in a bit as well. But overall, that combined value, market opportunity, or enterprise value is about $26 trillion worth. So imagine 76% of those businesses are saying their business is not going to be recognized in the next few years. And that's, predicated on, ecosystems essentially being that change agent to essentially adapt, right? I mean, that's the main crux of the issue is, for you as a business to evolve, for you to continue to innovate at the scale and the speed that's needed for innovation, you have to adapt to what's happening in the market. And we'll talk about these things here in the next two. The other point is mergers and acquisitions, right? I mean, as you probably know, mergers and acquisitions allow for faster pivots. They allow you to optimize your portfolio, accelerate innovation, capture the market opportunity, and drive the growth that you're looking for. I mean, you look at some of the, the most recent ones that I could think about, and I saw in the news recently as well, is, Walmart and Flipkart in India, right? T-Mobile and Sprint merging last year, or was it last year or the year before? Google Cloud acquiring Looker, acquiring Actifio, one of my ISVs that I worked with. IBM acquiring Turbonomics, and actually, as of this morning, IBM announced that they were going to acquire a Salesforce partner called Wag. And that just shows that there's a ton happening around mergers and acquisitions to accelerate the market opportunity that each of these businesses have, but more importantly, to adapt to what's happening around accelerating the cloud acceleration and automation, in the market. And the last piece is workforce, right? Workforce is essentially augmenting your own workforce, empowering your employees to unleash that passion, that purpose, that performance that they have. And that's predicated on automation, right? As we saw, COVID accelerated a lot of things where automation became more important and is going to continue to be more important around how do we reduce the touch points? How do we make our processes efficient? And all of that entails essentially making our employees much more productive at the end of the day. The second point is a McKinsey study that was done using Forrester data that talks about a really close to heart, especially over the past year with COVID, the e-commerce movement, right? 17% of a $13 trillion spend, B2B spend. So this is about $2 trillion opportunity. Now that's shifting from kind of that traditional way of buying and reselling from a channel standpoint to more of the marketplace and the e-commerce models. And we don't need to talk about why that is, right? It's all the stuff that's been happening, but also accelerated within the past year. If you look at e-commerce, the data point is in 3 months of last year, the first 3 months of last year, in 2020. E-commerce business grew in 3 months what we've been growing over the past 10 years. And that represented a third of the US economy overall. And that's because of that digitization of the buying experience, right? I mean, part of it is obviously COVID, but also the buyer, the IT buyer, the customer, even the end user as a consumer is much more savvy, right? You don't necessarily go to a place and want to get educated and want to be sold to anymore. You, as a buyer, for the most part, almost have a decision kind of made before you go and acquire something. When I go and purchase something, I have an idea as an end user of what I want, and it's a matter of tactics at the end. And for me to align to that digitization strategy that's happening, right? We've heard about digital transformation. A lot of governments are going through that, digitizing their services. A lot of companies are going through digital transformation. I see a lot of system integrators, that are in the audience, and you're very close and familiar to the digitization practices that your own companies have to help customers accelerate their digital journey, be it cloud adoption, be it automation, be it AI, ML, etc. But again, that 17% of $13 trillion of B2B spend, that's huge. And it's predicted that it's going to actually be, by 2023. And actually, as of recent, they're saying, Forrester actually informed me that they were actually going to have, most likely we're going to reach this number of penetration through marketplaces and e-commerce by the end of this year. So that acceleration is definitely happening. And it's all, again, about digitizing those channels, aligning to the customer's buying journey. You look at product-led growth as a strategy, right? You're looking to grow more faster, more efficient, leverage those products to create pipelines of activities. Think of companies like Zoom, for example, or Slack, Dropbox, right? Their product-like strategies where we're going to allow these customers to go and leverage our products and then convert that pipeline into paying customers. But a big piece of that product-led strategy was predicated on not just the fact that they're giving away Zoom for free as an end user tool, but also the integration and insertion of the different channels around the ecosystem that they've built around Zoom, around Slack, around Candid, Dropbox, etc. So we'll talk about that in a bit as well. And we talked about the direct-to-consumer mindset. Obviously, that's shifting. The behaviors are shifting, and the technology buyer, more importantly, is behaving more like a consumer now. So, and then the other piece also is millennials, right? They're coming in the forefront of driving a lot of the change in the economy. The buyer today and more importantly in the future is going to be this new generation, and this new generation is used to buying and procuring and getting educated differently. Their buying journey is completely different than the traditional buyer. So how do we align on the marketplace motion? How do you, as you evolve your overall product strategy, how do you build that ecosystem of influence to drive that network effect and align to that buying journey? And then the last piece is just a stat from Forrester as well, and a lot of the company vendor CEOs mentioned this. A lot of traditional infrastructure companies, as we know, the market has been going towards software and a lot more towards SaaS, leaving the traditional infrastructure companies to think about how do we evolve, how do we really align to that market opportunity. 100% of these companies like Cisco and Dell, IBM and HP have committed to morphing and essentially evolving their product to a subscription and consumption-based model. And that's due to many different things, right? The go-to-market is changing. Their approach into the market is going to have to adapt to that buyer. Is going to have to adapt to that ecosystem of influence, as well as the pressures from stakeholders, right? I mean, for you to survive in the economy that we're in, for you to have that value, incremental value as a company, you need to have that recurring model. You need to have that subscription business, and essentially that's what customers want. Most importantly, is give me that utility type of consumption. So with that, I'm just going to go to the next slide real quickly to give you a lens of what I mean about this ecosystem of influence. This is by no means a slide that you can, we're going to go through one by one, but this is just to show you a lens of how vast an ecosystem could be, and what you, as part of building your strategic plan, your strategic priorities for your company, for your product, to think about what are those different touch points that could ultimately influence my customer's buying decision for my product. And it could be a direct influence and it could be an indirect influence. How are you aligning to that customer's buying behavior? Where are your customers getting educated? Where are they getting influenced? Where are they transacting? How do you help fill gaps and augment or complement your product strategy or your product portfolio or your services? How do you eliminate friction in your sales motions as you're selling to your customers, as your partners selling to your customers, as that ecosystem of influence is coming together to influence your customer? How do you eliminate that friction point for your customer to make that buying journey easier? So it's very critical now that we think about how ecosystems are really affecting the customer and the buying journey, and goes back to that stat of 76% of that business 76% of leader surveys say their business is not going to be recognizable within the next 5 years. It's because of this, right? No longer are we just buying one-to-one. No longer are we buying just from that distributor or that broker or that direct seller that we're talking to. There is a network effect happening, and we definitely need to align to that. And that's the value of the ecosystem partnership landscape. To give you a very high level lens, this is by no means the full-on view, right? But I wanted to divvy it up in a very simplistic way today to just, give you that kind of one-on-one version of this, right, view. So from an ecosystem landscape, the way I think about it, the way I divvy it up, and the way that I would challenge you to think about it as you build out your go-to-market is there will be certain partner motions that you need to adopt. So what are those selling motions? So as part of your sales go-to-market and product go-to-market, what are those motions that you would want to look at and adopt as part of your strategy? And then the second thing is, what are those different partner types that we align with? So when we look at sales motions or partner motions, there's 3 distinct ones that I kind of categorize. Again, you can, mix and match, etc. There are a lot of times where a partner could be multiple. So, you can have a partnership that has multiple motions, or a partner type that could be different partner types. But to simplify it, right, you have a sell with partner motion. So essentially it's me as an entity, you as an entity, we come together and we co-sell our solution, our product, our service together to the end customer. There's the sell through. So essentially I as a partner will sell your products or sell your services. So I become almost a distributor, even though there are separate distributors as part of this as well. So there's 1-tier partners, 2-tier partners, where we're selling our products through a channel specifically. And then there's also, from a business development perspective, there's a sell to partnership, right? So if you think about how a lot of the white label embedded type of partnerships come together, it's, you're going to leverage my technology. So I'm a startup, and you're a partner or you're a vendor that will leverage my technology underneath the hood, and that becomes a sell to partnership essentially. So 3 partner motions: sell with, sell through, and sell to is the way I categorize it, very simply. And then from a partner types perspective, Three categories, very high level, but technologies and technology alliances. This is product partnerships, platform integration partnerships. These are the vendors, the ISVs, the cloud providers, where essentially I as an ISV will integrate top of stack, or I as a startup will integrate with other startups or other ISVs to complement my product portfolio, or I become part of the technology stack of a vendor, be it a Cisco, be it a Google, be it an AWS, to complement their portfolio, to enhance their portfolio with whatever capability I bring to the table as a technology vendor, as a technology partner, as a technology alliance. So think of this as products partnering together. Then you have the channels, sales channels, your services channels, kept it very high level, but this is where your sell through partnerships a lot of times sit. A lot of you are in the services industry, right? Wipro, Tata, Accenture, those types of partners, right? These are services, global system integrators. These are potentially the consultants that come into play. These are the regional system integrators. These are the value-added resellers. All of these sales and services channels are essentially ones that resell my product, resell my service, drive implementations, and have a life cycle approach to landing, expanding, and adopting and expanding that product and that service that I'm taking to the market. And then the last one is more of like marketing, branding, sponsorship type of partnership. So, affiliate marketing, where it's a referral type of partnership, etc. Those fall into what I call kind of this marketing, sponsorship, branding. Now, again, with that, while I have those three distinctions between the partner motion and the partner types, they can be intermatched, right? I had partners that were technology alliance partners. There were ISVs that also were where we did sponsorships, where we did co-marketing. They were sell with, co-sell. We were selling with them and co-selling with them. And we also had partners where we were selling to them, or they were selling to us as part of an embedded strategy from a product perspective. So I hope that helps. I wanted to launch one more survey, if I can, real quickly before we talk about a couple other points here. So with that, I'd love to get a perspective from you guys as far as how do you, what's that main consideration as you're building out your product strategy, your development strategy for your products? What do you look to do mostly? Build, buy, or partner? Do you, mainly focus on just building it yourself? Do you focus on buying, acquisition, or do you look to partner, be it integration partners or whatever, or embedded or white label?
The poll is launched, Bader. Interestingly, both build and partner are 50-50%, close to that.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I see that. Okay. Did you want to end the poll or?
Sure.
All right. Perfect. Awesome. Let me close that and go back to my screen. So very interesting, right? A lot of it is build and partner, not as much buy, right? Which is it makes sense if you're a startup. You're not thinking potentially, especially early stage startups, you're not thinking potentially of acquisitions early on, even though there are startups that think about acquisitions as part of their product incubation strategy. But the build by partner dilemma is what I call it. That's ultimate dilemma when you look at corp development, when you look at product strategy. And it comes down to what's that investment cost versus value based on one of those three things, one of these three approaches, right? So I'll give you an example. I mean, I was part of, you heard me say earlier, Google Cloud acquired a company called Actifio last year, right? Was my role specifically was to work on the data protection ecosystem. So who are those backup, disaster recovery, archival, ISVs and startups? How do we actually define internally our build by partner strategy for that? I come at it obviously from an ecosystem partnership lens. And how do we launch solutions into the market? How do we drive marketplace offerings with these ISVs? How do we drive new integrations with new ISVs, incubate new integrations and new partnerships? And ultimately, if and when we were to acquire, who would that be, right? So that was a partnership, right, with the product teams, the solution teams, the engineering teams, and a lot of acquisitions happen to complement a product to fill a gap. You look at Cisco, probably one of the most advanced when it comes to acquiring companies. When I left in 2018, I think we were like at 230 acquisitions at that point in time, and not every acquisition works, but it's about, again, finding those niches that you look at to, again, complement your product strategy or company strategy overall to fill a gap that you might have. Sometimes acquisitions happen to take out competition. Sometimes it's to fill those gaps. And then obviously the build, I'm not going to talk about the build piece, but there is merit to that as well. If you look at the main things that you really want to look at is balancing between how do I capitalize on the opportunity, how do I reduce that time to market without losing a lot of opportunity. There's something called the lost opportunity, right? There's a value around lost opportunity if I develop it and maintain it myself. Where's the balance, right? And that's just a discussion that you have internally to rationalize your product strategy, your go-to-market, and how the build by partner comes into play. How does co-opetition fit into this? How does that fit into your strategy? Is it more of a transaction or is it more of a long-term? Now, I remember when at Cisco, we had obviously the unified communications portfolio, telephony, voice over IP, etc. And when Microsoft came out with their UC solution, at that point before that point we were partnering, and at one point they became a competitor on that front. But what we realized is, it's not about Cisco or Microsoft, it's about the customer. And I think that's a mind shift that we all have to go through as product leaders, as ecosystem partnership leaders, to say, yes, a partner, this individual, or this organization or company or solution might be competitive to us. But if my customer is actually adopting both of us as a solution, because that's ultimately what matters, is we solve problems for the customers, then that's what's important and that's what we need to do. And at that point in time, Cisco and Microsoft had to come together and figure out, what does that joint offering look like? When a customer uses Microsoft and uses Cisco, how do we come together? So a lot to think about, again, around finding that balance between time to market, between that route to market, right? How do I go and acquire or partner to drive scale through my, to essentially expand into different routes? Or is there a perceived barrier to low entry that I need to worry about here? And obviously the competitive advantage, around building it myself, there's a lot of merit to that. There's a lot of internal strategy that happens, a lot of know-how, best practices, and knowledge gained from building it. But also, how do you balance that with the other things that we just talked about if you were to buy and partner? So there is no one size fit all. The thing that I wanted to bring up here, the main takeaway, if you walk away with one nugget here, is, evaluate your investment cost versus the value that you would receive if you were to build it, if you were to buy it, or if you were to partner to achieve it. And when we talk about that, again, that 76% of the business models are going to be are changing in the next 5 years, and the biggest catalyst of that is the ecosystem landscape, the ecosystem partnerships. It's because of this embedded piece, right? I, as a startup, can go and complement my solution to go and capture a bigger market opportunity. I, as a company, can go fill a gap in my product portfolio to go and align to solve a customer problem. I, as a startup, could drive scale and growth of my product from a product-led growth perspective if I embed my solution into other stuff. So you look at, for example, you go to like oh man, I'm blanking on the site for the website. It'll come to me, but you go into some websites, for example, and it says powered by X, right? That's a product-led growth strategy, and that's a partnership. That's an ecosystem play there that happens, which you essentially become part of a bigger brand, not from a co-branding, but from a solution, a co-solutioning standpoint. So main takeaway here is evaluate the balance between cost and value, thinking about these three pillars specifically. And with that, you look at, again, you heard Sai say in the beginning, and I'm a firm believer of this. I've grown up in partnership space, and I've seen both sides of it, from product and sales side. And ecosystem partnerships do enable growth and scale. That relationship is very essential for you to adapt. It helps you drive scale through the different motions that we talked about. It helps you drive growth through those motions as well. It helps you drive, the product, rationalize your product portfolio to go capture those, market making solutions, and to capture that market opportunity overall. So with that, I wanted to share, this. So this is something I came up with a few months ago now, I think, called the 10 Partnership Commitments. It's essentially a spin on something I saw where, and if you're interested, there's if you go to LinkedIn, you search my name. It's one of the first articles there, and you can read a little bit more details, but we can talk about it here. But essentially what it outlines is, what are those rules of engagement when it comes to ensuring excellence in partnering? And again, this is no science, this is no cookbook, but this is based on, over a decade and a half of experience working with all different partner types, seeing, what has worked, what hasn't worked, what led to success, what led to failure, what led to acquisition. There are certain themes that kind of are consistent across the board. And the first one I want to call out is one that doesn't necessarily get called out a lot in business, because sadly, we've been, as an economy, as an industry, as a society, we've been conditioned to think about business as a transaction. But you need to all take a step back, and we need to all take a step back and say, how do we actually keep reminding ourselves that we are dealing with people first and foremost in any business transaction? So being human, I call that as the first ultimate rule of commitments, partnership commitment, because you're dealing with people. And partnerships, regardless of what type it is or what motion it is, partner motion, you are dealing with people. These are not transactions. You need to lead with empathy. You need to engage with empathy. The only way you will create reciprocal relationships is through that type of interaction from a human perspective, which ultimately gets you the trust. So a lot of times when people say partnering, oh, the first thing is trust. Agreed. And I'll come back to that in a minute. You see it listed there on the bottom. But trust is earned, and it starts with first being human. The second thing is clarifying purpose. So many times where partnerships come together, where entities come together, or even individuals come together to partner, it's just like a marriage, right? You need to have a purpose of why 1 + 1 is going to equal 3. Why we coming together are going to capture a market opportunity. Whether you're incubating a partnership or a solution, whether you're cultivating or nurturing a relationship, it doesn't matter. You need to clarify the purpose, the intent of why we are coming together. We need to define what that vision is, what our strategies are, and what our success metrics, what the success metrics will be to ensuring that we achieve that outcome of the purpose of coming together. Number 3 is we need to make sure it's mutually beneficial. Partnerships that are one-sided from a benefit don't last. And we need to co-define what that mutually beneficial engagement model looks like, both short-term and long-term. What does success look like to ensure that we have a sustainable and profitable practice, profitable business, profitable partnership? That ultimately goes to number 4, solves a customer problem. If we're not solving a customer problem, who cares? You heard us talk about Clubhouse, and a lot of times we talk about, we get a lot of questions on from startups, and they talk about their value proposition. And the first challenging question we say is, tell me why do I care? Who cares? If you can solve the who cares, about your own product as a startup or as a company or as a product leader, imagine now you have to solve the who cares of you coming together with the partner. If you're integrating solutions together, or if you're driving a joint go-to-market, from a sales motion or a co-branding motion, who cares? What does that achieve ultimately? And you need to illustrate how that problem is solving a problem for the customer. What is that problem that we're solving? Who are we solving it for? And how we are solving it, and why we're solving it is in the first place, and how it would be advantageous. The other piece is we need to elevate negotiations. Sometimes negotiations seem like a zero-sum game, right? And they do fail. Those types of negotiations fail. Again, the point of partnership is that we jointly come together to capture and capitalize on a market opportunity. Let's make sure that it's a win-win, back to that mutually beneficial. Let's make sure that negotiation of the partnership, regardless of what type of a partnership, regardless of what type of agreement we're trying to put together, that needs to be a win-win, so both sides can actually be profitable, can be successful, and can solve a problem for the customer. Some tactical things that we need to look at is accountability. We need to hold each other accountable. We need to develop those plans, the stakeholder maps. Look at, what is that matrix of engagement? Ultimately, we need to set expectations around this intent that we came together for. And we need to measure that. We need to empower that engagement as well. Partnering is very complex, as in product, right? As you know, as a product leader, you have so many different stakeholders. In partnerships, the same thing, right? I have worked with product leads, engineering leads, marketing leads, finance leads, legal leads, and operational leads. And for you to make a partnership successful, you need to figure out how do you really empower that engagement, because you are navigating ambiguity a lot of times, and you have to be that cross-functional master ultimately to make a partnership work. And even the stakeholders that engage with you have to think in that kind of mindset. And again, you go back to accountability. We hold each other accountable on that engagement. Then we need to measure and communicate. We need to have a healthy communication. If we cannot have an honest dialogue amongst ourselves as partners, the partnership fails. So how do you ensure you have those cadence calls? How do you ensure you have a governance model in place? I used to run something called the state of the business, state of the practice with my partners. Weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever, depending on the partner and engagement model. Let's sit down, all the stakeholders come together around the table and talk about where we've been, where we're headed, how we're going to get there. And we need to measure and have data points, right? To measure the statistics about where we're headed, the performance, be it, bookings, be it revenue, be it profitability, all of that has to be measured. And you have to define what those are as part of setting expectations up front. The last two pieces I want to mention are celebrate the ecosystem. There's a ton of work, as you can imagine. We're only just touching the surface here. Celebrate those wins. Celebrate the individuals that make this happen. A lot of times partnerships is, viewed as kind of this other thing that, okay, we'll think about it, we'll worry about it later. But there's a lot of stuff that goes into making a partnership successful. Think about, as a brand, as a product leader, if you're coming together with a partner, how do you amplify each other? How do you advocate and recognize and evangelize what we're putting together and offering to the market and how we're solving those problems? And be humble about it. Again, back to that being human. And then the last piece, wrapping up, is trustworthiness, right? Ultimately, trust is the killer of partnerships. If there's no trust in a partnership, it fails. The reason I have it listed as number 10 in my commitments and not number 1 is because you have to earn trust. Trust is not, hey, Sai, I would like to partner with you. Do you trust me? Prove it to me, right? Both sides have to prove it to each other. So it is the most pivotal element when it comes to partnering, but you have to earn it through action, through merit, and through empathy. So you can eventually manifest that trust with each other. So as we wrap up here, I want to just summarize real quickly with these 3 main things around how ecosystem partnerships come together to drive scale and growth. Call to action, summary, takeaways, however you want to define it. Make sure you as a product leader are aligning to those market disruptions that are happening. Automation, cloud, the experience in the marketplaces with the digital buyer. All of that is shifting the way things are happening. The way that your product, be it product-led growth strategy or sales-led growth strategy, all of that needs to shift and happen. all of that needs to is shifting, and you need to adapt to it and align to that specific disruption that is in conjunction with your business model. Make sure you define, number two, make sure you define a deliberate ecosystem strategy. A lot of times when I talk to startups, I say, hey, what is your go-to-market strategy? And they give me some marketing plan, and that's it. It's like, hey, yeah, I'm going to do, if it's a direct-to-consumer, startup, yeah, I'm doing Facebook ads, or I'm doing Instagram ads, or I'm doing, some marketing agency, and I'm doing paid ads. Cool. But who's selling? How does partnerships come into the mix? How do you actually drive from a product-led perspective? How do you drive from a sales-led perspective? How do you drive that growth? And how do you really evolve your product portfolio and rationalize your product strategy through that development of build by partner as part of your overall strategy? And number three, adopt the rules of engagement. It doesn't have to be the 10 that I outlined. It can be whatever works for your business, for your partnership, but you need to have a set of rules of engagement. As cheesy, as silly as it may sound, that goes a long way, because at the end of the day, we're dealing with people, and you have to look at it from a people, process, and a technology. We didn't really talk about the technology aspect of partnerships. As we have customer relationship management tools, there's also partner relationship management tools. There's a tech stack. If you look at, the Forrester analyst Jay McBain puts out an updated tech stack of different ISVs and software solutions in the partner space, in the partner stack, and it's from automation to relationship management to the experience side. And there's, again, from a people, process, technology perspective, there's the partnership element, there's the customer element, there's the product element, and ultimately, to drive that success with ecosystem partners, you need to have the rules of engagement, thinking about it holistically, complement it with this actual deliberate strategy. You need to be deliberate about your strategy and your partnership go-to-market, and align that to your overall disruptions. So with that, I'm going to wrap up by saying thank you. I would love to connect with you all. Sai mentioned the clubhouse. I do have a club that I run, and I'm also a co-admin with another colleague. So 2 partnership clubs here on Clubhouse. Tech Partnerships Alliance. I'm actually launching this week. I am going to be hosting the Forrester analyst that I referenced in the presentation earlier, Jay McBain. We're going to have a conversation. It's really more of like a club launch party inaugural session where we're going to talk about partnerships, talk about the different conversations, the community building, and we'll have ongoing conversations around all things tech partnerships. And then the other one is Tech Builders, where it's this is really just a diverse group. I mean, we have product leaders, solution leaders, marketers, startups. I mean, everybody's in this space, and we partner together. Myself and the Tech Partnerships Club and Tech Builders Club, we partner together to ultimately drive value and provide insights for teams. So if you're interested, please go to Tech Partnerships Club and sign up for the newsletter. Tech Builders has a newsletter as well. And if you want to get in contact with me, by all means, badirhamdan.com. And I have 2 forms there. One is to engage on the Tech Partnerships Club. And if you need an invite, etc., we can help get you an invite to Clubhouse. Or if you are a startup or even a business that is looking to build and drive a go-to-market strategy, to need assistance with your go-to-market strategy, and I can help you define what that looks like. I can help rationalize what that strategy looks like, and I do engage and advise startups right now on that as well. So with that, thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was beneficial and insightful, and I'd love to take any questions you may have.
Absolutely. That was a brilliant session. Thank you, Bader. So if you could stop sharing your screen so that we can come on full screen for people to look at. So there are a few, keep your video on so we can, look at that. I think, the topic, Bader, are you there?
I am.
Okay. Yep. So the topic, in fact, partnerships, ecosystem is a very, very complex area to navigate, right? Even for a seasoned, product leader or a business leader, this can become very challenging. I love the way that you kind of synthesized some of the most elements of it, right? Especially around the product motions and the product types, because often you hear people talking about mixing and matching both. While that is true, there are permutations and combinations that's possible, but separating out the emotions and the types are absolutely critical, right? And thanks for doing that. I particularly love the 10 commandments, and that shows a distillation of your experience and learnings that have come together and identified 10 simple guidelines to follow with. Absolutely loved it, and I'm sure many of the audience can go and look at your LinkedIn article for a more detailed description of that. But
and if you're not on LinkedIn, by the way, just look, if you're not on LinkedIn and you're on Twitter, my first pinned tweet is also the 10 partnership commandments, so you can find it everywhere. So
great. On that note, when you said ask people to join Clubhouse and your club, just a quick heads up to people, there are a lot of beta heads out there in that thing. So you want to follow the right beta, here Hamdan. And it took me a while, by the way, beta, to actually look for you and then join that. But great. So there are a few questions from the audience, and we'll pick that. So just to summarize a little bit, I think when we talk about these partnerships and ecosystems, there are several reasons why companies want to create these partnerships, right? Most importantly, at least in my experience, enhance overall value proposition of the product is one reason. Access to partners, customers is another reason. And of course, technology partnerships, right? Where you either license the technology or intellectual property, or even use the technology to build what we call as a whole product, right? Many folks think about just the core product, but there's a whole product that customer is seeing right from the buying stage to purchasing experience to onboarding to activation, all of that stuff, right? And at different stages, you may need different types of partners. But in your experience, what is the biggest value that you have seen in building and developing partnerships?
Yeah, and just to hit on that point, Ray, I might have when I had that one slide that talks about ecosystem partnerships to drive scale and growth. Many times, in talking to customers, it's enterprises rely on ISVs. They rely on that ecosystem, whether we like it or not. And I think that's a missed opportunity. I remember getting in front of an engineering team, and we were talking about, I was almost like version 301 of the conversation. I thought that's where I was headed, and I take a step back and say, oh, whoa, I need to really go back and educate and drive awareness around how partnership matters. And I started out with one comment. I'm like, if we are trying to capture the enterprise market, these customers rely on ISVs. And I think, going back to your question, the biggest value I see, honestly, is what brings me joy and why I've been doing this for a very long time, and I will continue to do this, is being able to build something, and that something could be a relationship. That something could be a joint offering, even a validated design, right? Seeing that, putting the right context around it, empowering it the right way with the right enablement, the right strategies, and seeing success in the market of, we are truly solving a problem that may not be solved by ourselves, but it becomes a solved problem through this ecosystem integration or through this ecosystem engagement model. That to me is the biggest joy of partnership at the end of the day, because we are solving a problem and we're doing it by combining forces. Again, 1 + 1 = 3. And that's the value of partnerships.
I think that's absolutely true when it comes to partnerships. So Chaitali asks an important question, and I'm sure anybody who has worked in partnerships will recognize two kinds of conflict, right? One is channel conflict, but what she's asking more in terms of is a partner conflict, right? So you're working with, and I think you alluded to that with Cisco and Microsoft example, and fascinating. So you have to work with many partners, and some of these partners are working with your competitors, and sometimes there is an opportunity for exclusivity, but not often, right? Especially if the partner is reasonably big. So how do you deal with such kind of conflicts? What are the best ways to go through those partnerships?
Yeah. Couple quick points. There will always be some version of a channel partner conflict, because you're dealing with two separate entities with two separate priorities and two separate paths. The point of the 10 partnership commandments of clarifying intent is to try and avoid that as much as possible. And then the criteria around setting up for success. What are those actual, metrics of success? How are we going to engage? You can be a partner one day and you can be a competitor another day based on a customer transaction. That doesn't mean that we are, oil and water and we don't talk to each other. We need to figure out what is the customer problem that we're trying to solve, make that the North Star, and then enable the right partnership strategies in place. Are you going to get away from channel conflict from a sales perspective? No. We had, even at Cisco, we had the biggest channel landscape in the world, right? 300,000+ types of partners. And we had channel conflicts and opportunities on deals. We had to manage through it. So part of, again, you heard me say cross-functional mastery. I mean, part of a channel role, part of a partnership role is to figure out those dynamics. One day I'm a relationship counselor. One day I am a product manager. One day I'm a marketeer. And that's ultimately what helps mitigate the risk, because the way you do that is you clarify intent, you set up for success, and you measure and you communicate. And you have those honest conversations. If there's a conflict, you address it head on and don't let it linger.
Yeah. Super.
But you can't avoid it. It's a reality. And even if you're not going to engage with partners, you will have some other version of a conflict, even internally between product teams or engineering teams. So
yeah, I think accept that conflict is a reality, but there are better ways to address, just as you said. So great. I think we are at the top of the hour, but I think let's take a couple more quick questions.
I can take more questions if you want. That's fine.
And we'll take two more, and I request you, for the remaining ones, if people follow up with you and I have some questions, I appreciate if you can respond to them and give them that guidance.
Sure.
Right. So one interesting question that Anup brings up is, especially I think it's true in the context of, if you're a small company, not very well known, but you are looking for partnerships with in a 100-pound gorilla, and then there is a possibility of brand cannibalization there, right? So are there any tips from your experience that what to be aware of, especially when you know that you are getting into this situation and the partner is going to take all the limelight and use their leverage? If so,
right. I would urge, and we've had this conversation. I've had this conversation actually recently with one of the startups I advise about exclusivity with a partnership agreement and deal that they were working on, and there's benefits and there's pros and cons to it, right?
Yeah.
Is there a brand cannibalization that could happen? Of course. Can you have the authority and you have the power to have that conversation when you bring together this partnership in your terms, and as you build out your terms of the partnership, to define what the co-brand looks like, right? At the end of the day, you're not getting acquired, you're partnering. So keep that in mind, right? I've worked with a lot of small startups, ISVs and partners and IHVs and OEMs that want to leverage the Cisco brand, want to leverage the Google brand.
Right.
But ultimately, the onus was on them to sell their product at the end of the day, because you can imagine these big brands have a ton of partners. Partners wanted to keep their branding, and that was perfectly fine based on the engagement model that we had or the partnership type. And there's partner programs that come into play and a whole new other world that we're not going to open up right now. But what does your partner program look like? What does their partner program look like? And how do you come together to an agreement? Again, negotiations, as you saw, right? Negotiations need to be not a zero sum. They need to be beneficial for both sides. Come together to figure out how do you capture that market opportunity and figure out the tactics in the terms term sheet, essentially.
True, and I believe this also requires, and this is dovetails into what Salya's question is about. Are there any specific cultural, organization cultural alignment or mindset that one needs to adopt, especially as a leader, to make it much more conducive and friendly to partner? Because a lot of organizations resist partnerships for a variety of reasons, right? Although they recognize the need, that the value that they may bring in, but there is a certain amount of insecurity, both from giving away certain things to one's own careers, right? And what kind of mindset or the organization culture do you think is much more convenient or amenable to partnerships?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly would not even differentiate between partnerships and not in this context, because as a business leader, be it a product leader, sales leader, an IT leader, if you're going to transact, if you're going to do business in a specific culture, you need to have that awareness, the cultural awareness of how that culture operates. Be it in the US, the Western culture is different than the Middle Eastern culture, or different than the Asian culture. And there are nuances at the end of the day that exist that you just have to be aware of them, as a leader, regardless of how the partnership comes together, because the partnership is just one element of running the business. So, I would actually more generalize it beyond partnerships. You need to have that awareness and that be cognizant of the cultural elements and the cultural specifics that exist. If you're going to do business in Japan versus do business in India versus do business in the UK, very different worlds. And regardless if you're having a business conversation, a sales conversation, a technical conversation, or a partnership conversation, you're dealing with people, and that's that be human first.
Yeah.
You're dealing with people and approach it from that perspective.
Yeah, I think for all the reasons that you mentioned and discussed, this is why this area is very important, but at the same time, we need to navigate with great care. It's a complex thing to deal with. With that, thank you so much, Vader, for your time and your insights. Truly appreciate it. Just if you can hang on for a couple of minutes, we'll wrap up the announcements and then we'll let you go. So congratulations to Chaitali for the excellent question. You win. Feel free to choose the digital learning course that you want. Reach out to the team, and they will give you access to that. The couple of other quick announcements. I think there's a leaderboard here, which is kind of a game where the participants can go and invite their friends and colleagues to come to the sessions like these and take advantage of it, learn from these insights and wisdom, especially at least what you can learn from a 1 hour session like this on partnerships. You might take, a few hours or days of reading many things and digesting yourself, right? So let's move to the next announcement really quickly. As part of this product leadership festival, one of the reasons why IPL does that is to grow, nurture a product community, of professionals from various product teams and companies. So folks, go ahead, scan the QR code or go to community.productleadersforum.org and become a part of this community. There are 1,600 plus product professionals already there, very active, sharing information, knowledge, resources, lots of CXOs part of that as well. So do take advantage and nurture this ecosystem. One of my favorites, this one is started by the alumni of Institute of Product Leadership, a survey that is designed, or the goal of this is to establish the state of product management in this country. It's a survey, it's about 10-minute survey, so take it later, folks. Once you take it, you get a report with some really interesting insights on the salary levels of product managers in this country, the day-to-day activities that one does, and what are hiring managers looking for when they're hiring into product roles. So with that, again, Peter, please accept a small token, a gesture of appreciation from us, a certificate from IPL. And thank you so much for your time. Truly appreciate you joining and sharing with us.